So in this video, we are going to try to turn this mess into this. I hope you enjoy watching. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by figuring out what height I want my shelves. There's a couple of factors that I use to calculate this. One, how tall is the tallest thing that can sit on the floor on the concrete and not absorb water from the car, from snow runoff, and any water that wicks through on the floor. And how tall is the person who's going to want to pull something off the second shelf. All right, so I've kind of gauged how high I'm going to make mine, somewhere between 26 and 30 inches, but I have to factor in the width of the 2x4 that's going to go on the front. So whatever height I want to make sure that I add 3.5 inches to it, so the height of this doesn't interfere with what I'm trying to slide in. Now, the tallest thing that I'm going to try to put in here, at least at first, is going to be right around 24 to 26 inches, depending on what I decide to put in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my first shelf at 30 inches. Now, there's a couple ways you can do this. All right, but I'm going to give you some suggestions that make this super easy. My shelves are going to be 8 feet, okay? And then the height will be built up from there. So I'm going to do this using very basic tools. Hammer, nails, I'll at some point use a screwdriver, and a little power drill. All right, tools that most homeowners have. But if you have a framing nailer, that's great. Okay, to go ahead and put this all together, because it's just going to save you a ton of time and effort. But since most homeowners who may want to do this in an afternoon or on the weekend, they don't want to have to deal with that. So in this project, that's the goal. All right, I'll kind of walk you through what I'm doing as I'm doing it. So this floor is relatively level. All right, if your garage is old or if the floor is completely unlevel, you are not going to want to do this the way that I show you. Okay, you're going to want to make a couple extra corrections, but for the most part, it should be pretty straightforward. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to measure up 30 inches. Now, my floor does slant a little bit, so I don't want to measure 30 inches from each stud. I want to measure up 30 inches from one point, typically the highest point, but I've given myself a couple inches, so it should be good. So I'm going to come over to here. I'm going to mark this at 30 inches. Now, I'm going to grab my level and mark it from the top. Now, let's say you don't have a level, all right, which is totally fine. If you don't have a level, get your smartphone out, download one of the many level apps that come on there, and grab a long straight piece of something that will actually show you how to do this. And this isn't exact science by any means. We're just trying to get this thing as level so things just don't go generally rolling off. So I definitely have enough of these marked out. Now I'm going to leave myself a little bit of room here so I can put some taller things in here, my ladder and my mower. So I'm going to actually start from here, and I'm going to measure down to 8 feet. And this should land me, if the garage was built correctly, right in the middle of the stud. So all I have to do is come through here and attach my first piece. All right, here we go. What we're going to do is we're going to actually make these shelves. I think I said 8 feet, but now they're actually going to be a little bit less than that. I'm a little bit worried about some of the room. So the markings will all stay the same. And what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to use a decking screw to put my first board in. This will help secure it in as we go along. So this will be make it a little bit easier for us. So I'm going to set this up, and I'm going to go ahead and mark where I want this now. So we're going to come down to here, place this right at the end of this, which will give us plenty of room to store some of the bigger things. I'm going to mark a couple of these with a pencil to just give me an idea of where the studs line up. And then we're going to go ahead and get a couple of these started, so it'll be easy. Install them. Now you can use a hammer or whatever. This just happens to be an impact wrench, a Milwaukee one that I really, really like for jobs like this. Now I'm just going to put one in so I can actually scoot this back and forth to make sure I can get this thing as level as possible. I have the lines that I've used for this already that I can use, but it's never a bad idea to go ahead and just throw one of these on here just to make sure everything's copacetic. All right, next I'm going to go ahead and hammer the rest of these in, save some money with the decking screws because I probably want to use those later for something. Now the advantage of using screws is this is actually a lot easier to take off later, but with hammer I don't plan on taking this down anytime soon, so we'll save a little bit of money. I personally think a little bit of time by using a hammer and nails. Now I'm not going to nail this one in because shelf is only going to extend to here, so I can cut that off later or just leave it there. It's not hurting anything. So there's our first piece. Now we need to figure out the height of the second shelf. So I'm going to measure from here, and we're going to just say that the shelving unit here, the shelves that are coming is a 1/2 inch. So I need to add that to whatever measurement I want to come up to. Now this one right here, we came up to 30 inches. That gives me, before I hit here, and I want to stay well away from my garage top, so that gives me an extra 50 inches. So I'm going to come up another 30 inches here, and then that will give me 23 under here. So I'm going to have a lot more surface area than I originally did. Because this first one's level, I can just come up here 30 inches, lock my tape measure into place, and go ahead and mark them all the way down the line. I'm going to go ahead and follow the exact same process for mounting the first one as I did the second one. Now I have these two up, and now I'm going to go ahead, and now we're going to go off the rails a little bit with the process that I'm going to take. And I'm going to show you what we're going to do. I need to build the two posts for this, but again, I want to make sure that water doesn't damage any of this wood, so I'm going to go ahead and show you how I'm going to overcome that here in a second. Okay, so for this next part, what I need is I need a little extra scrap pieces of 2x4, and I just happen to not have any laying around right now. So I know that I'm going to have this come to, I'm going to have to cut this down to a little bit less than this. So I'm just going to mark up here. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and cut this piece off into two separate pieces, and you'll see why here in a second. All right, so what I did was I chopped off two even pieces of roughly 12 inches each, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach these two together with a couple of screws and some nails, and then we're going to put a bottom on here so concrete is not touching this lumber. I didn't want to use treated lumber, and I don't want ground contact on this. This is a little trick I'm going to show you here real quick. Now I'm using these torque bit screws. They're a little more expensive, but the headache is worth it. But you could use a flathead screwdriver. You could nail these in if you wanted to, whatever you needed to do here, okay? And I'll do both. So I've done this on one. I'm going to repeat the exact same process on another one here. All right, so why was I doing this? Let me show you. So what I bought here are a couple of plastic Simpson strong ties. These usually go on the bottom of a 4x4 that's used for a posting, for like a deck or stairs or something like this, where the wood meets the concrete. This fits right here if you take two 2x4s together. And you can see that You can see there's 4 holes here, and I'm going to screw them in, and they're offset. So this will create a situation with no ground cover or no ground contact with the wood. This is really important to make sure this thing lasts a long time. I just happen to have some torque bits here that'll fit perfectly for these from another project, but you could use really whatever you needed to. All right, so here we go. I'll tilt this up a little bit. Battery died. Going to the backup. I'll repeat the same thing on the next piece of wood. All right, so now these are ready to go. All right, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the 2x4s, mark this left so I know which one it is, and I'm going to mark this behind here so I know where my line is. All right, a little extra scrap right here. This will be my right. All right, now all I need to do is come in here and cut these. Dust masks aren't necessary for most people, but I just happen to be allergic to pine. So there you go. All right, here's my left side. Perfect. Perfect. That couldn't be better. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 2 pieces of 2x4, the same length as I want these to be out in the front. And then I can attach it to these. I'll do the same things on the bottom, and then we'll be ready to go. I'll show you a couple tricks here in a second. So I'm going to measure these, the distance that I want them to come out as. 81 1/4. Mark that down because I can never remember anything. And nobody will ever see that writing except for the guy who has to tear it apart someday. You can see here that I'm using a little square here. You could use anything really. This is just one that I had to happen from a construction class I took in high school. So now I'm going to cut these down to size. I've marked which one's the top and the bottom. So here we go. All right, here's a really cool trick you can do to make sure this thing's gonna be level and even. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just put 2 screws in each one of these boards, set them in here so we can be ready to rock and roll when it's time. All right, so now I'm gonna put these up against what I already have here, and I'll screw these in, making sure that everything's lined up how I want it to be. All right, we'll do the same thing on the bottom. What I'm going to do, I'm going to put these up individually and put them in. I'm going to put 1 screw on the top and the bottom, and then I'll nail in the other one, okay? Here we go. I ask, why am I putting nails and screws in here? Well, one, these screws are things that I had left over from another project, and it just makes it very easy to get all this stuff set. But the other reason I like to do it is because I like to have my nails to hold things in when I have a vertical load. I found that to be really important. I can unscrew this, and I know that this is now perfectly level with what I've mounted onto the wall. So now what I'm going to do is the plywood that I had cut, I had a cut over at Home Depot for you. So if you don't have a circular saw, you can easily do that. They did it for free, which was great. And now I just need to measure out 24-inch studs. I'll slap them onto the sides, mount the whole thing together, and get ready to slide in my plywood. All right. right, so next thing I want to do is I want to make sure that I make a 2x4 that will attach to here and to here, but I have to make sure that this distance is just a little bit over 24 inches, okay? That's going to be the trick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and measure in on this 1.5 inches, which is the size of the 2x4, okay? Then from there, I'm going to go ahead and go 24 inches and a quarter, all right? And then this should give me about 3¼ inches, which will fit back into the studded area. What I'm actually going to do is go ahead and get a couple of screws in here, ready to rock and roll, because that'll make things a little bit easier for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up right here, and I'm going to check this line to make sure I'm at least pretty close. Doesn't have to be perfect with this. Now I'm going to screw this in. Okay. I'll leave just one in for now. Then I'm going to measure down to 24 inches against the wall stud here. Just a little bit more than 24 inches. Bring this out. Now I got a really good solid base. I'll put two more screws in here, and I'll do the same thing to the top. So here we go again. You can see here now I have the basis for my structure. I'm going to do what I did here, that exact same thing, down on this side. All right, things really starting to look solid now. Becoming very cool. One more to go. All right, so at this point, this thing is really sturdy and it's ready to rock and roll. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to measure everything here, and then I'm going to cut the plywood to size. Usually with plywood, there's a coarse and a fine side, and I always like to have the fine side sticking up whenever possible. Awesome. There we go, guys. This is looking really, really good. Now what I'm going to do is line this up, mark it, cut it, and we are going to be done. No need for a tape measure on this part. Just get it set to where you want, mark it, flip it over, and then cut it. Now this requires a circular saw, or a sawzall, some way to cut it. You can do it by hand if you have to. So if you don't have one of these, this is still a project you can be done, and you're not going to lose that much time. This whole thing can be done with no electricity whatsoever. Amish style if you wanted to. Of course, it would come out a lot better if you were Amish. At least a lot better than the way that I made it. The only thing left to do is to put a couple of screws or nails into this, and that will help brace everything together. I'm going to put screws in here. I have a couple extra from another project. It'll just be easier. You could easily just put in anything from a roofing nail if you wanted to any nail that's over 1 inch long, really. And this whole thing will be done then. All right, this thing's built and is not budging at all. This thing's gonna last a ton of time because of a couple of things. One, I used plywood. I got literally the cheapest ones I could find at Home Depot that was still constitute plywood. I don't know, like 15, 30 seconds or something like that. 16 bucks for that. These spacers on the bottom are going to make a huge difference when we get, if the roof ever leaks, but most importantly, the snow that melts off the tires here in the Midwest, it's not going to affect this. This has just really added a lot of very good surface area so we can start storing some things. So I hope you enjoyed watching. If you enjoyed this video, I know the lighting's not great, I know I'm not the most eloquent guy out there, please hit the like and subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. And leave any comments at the bottom, suggestions for other people who watch this. So, you know, things maybe I could do different, things you liked about it, things you may not like about it, keeping the comments clean, and also subscribe. I just really appreciate it. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day to learn how to build this. You know, I did the whole thing actually for less than 30 bucks. So using leftover screws and stuff from other projects. So 30 bucks for a shelf like this, it's gonna last a long time. I'm pretty excited about it. All right, well, hey, thanks again for watching and please subscribe.